I knew something was off when I walked into the break room and found our new VP standing on the damn table, arms spread like he was about to ascend into LinkedIn heaven. "We don't need back office anchors slowing this rocket down," he declared, loud enough for the clients in Conference B to hear. He winked at an intern, high-fived someone from marketing, and then, God help us, shoved past a woman quietly reviewing documents near the coffee machine. That woman was our notary, the one I'd spent 3 weeks coordinating with, the one holding the only legally binding copy of Exhibit C for the $180 million escrow release. She didn't say a word, just packed her seal, slipped the folder shut, and walked out the front door like a ghost who'd seen enough of the living. And I just stood there, holding a cup of stale coffee, watching the paperwork equivalent of a lit fuse retreat into the parking lot. I didn't scream, didn't run after her. I opened my laptop, pulled up my log, and wrote one sentence. Notary departed at 9:43 a.m. after direct physical interference by Blake. I timestamped it, backed it up, encrypted it. Then I sipped the coffee, which somehow tasted even worse. By the way, if you've made it this far, do me a small favor. Tap that subscribe button and like this story. I know 90% of you are listening while doom scrolling or making your fourth cup of microwave tea, but seriously, it helps our whole crew keep the chaos coming. Back to it. The thing about my job, contracts and compliance lead, is that you only notice me when things go wrong. And that's how I like it. I'm the human firewall between what's promised in million-dollar PowerPoint decks and what the state actually lets you do with someone else's money. I don't make the rules. I just know exactly how to twist them into a noose when I need to. At that point in the quarter, we were in the final stretch of a major Series C raise, $180 million from a multinational investment consortium, half of it contingent on proper escrow compliance. That means everything had to be airtight: bylaws, exhibits, signatory authorities, and yes, the infamous Exhibit C. It's a notarized statement of indemnity that says, essentially, we didn't screw around with the escrow terms. It's dull. It's sacred. It has to be signed in ink in person with a state-licensed notary observing before pitch day. No e-sign, no DocuSign. No, we'll scan it later. Original wet ink, or the clause fails and the money stays frozen. I had lined up Barbara L. Renner, notary ID ending in 4423 3 weeks prior. Confirmed twice. Sent her the draft, the date, the compliance requirements. She'd notarized deals with us before. Thorough, old school, no tolerance for frat boy antics, which is probably why, when Blake shoulder-checked her like a linebacker on Adderall, she opted out of the circus. What made it worse was that no one noticed she was gone. Everyone in that building was too busy watching Blake strut around like he'd invented synergy. They ate it up, especially the senior team. HR kept repeating his catchphrases like brainwashed parrots: velocity over bureaucracy, fail faster, fix later. My favorite, legalese kills momentum. The only thing he killed was protocol, and maybe, if we were lucky, our reputation. Still, I kept things quiet. I had the original Exhibit C, blank, unnotarized. I stored it in my locked file drawer, separate from the scanned docs the interns were passing around like candy. I didn't raise a fuss. Didn't remind him. I'd done that once when he first arrived and got told, "We're not building a legal museum here." Fine, let him build a bonfire. I spent the rest of that week doing what I always did, preparing for disaster. I double-checked the clause 11.4 subsection B, buried in the escrow contract. It stated in deadpan legalese that failure to provide an original notarized Exhibit C prior to pitch submission voids escrow eligibility. May, not could, just voids, no ambiguity, no backspace. And I wasn't about to stick my neck out again for someone who thought protocols were optional accessories, so I waited, watched, logged everything, and the clock kept ticking. Blake Donnelly showed up on a Monday morning like he'd been fired from a reality show for being too smug. The kind of guy who refers to himself in the third person, probably has his own signature cologne, Disruption by Blake, and definitely doesn't know the difference between indemnification and an iced macchiato. Tall, too tan for someone not on vacation, with hair that looked like it came with a built-in NDA. He shook hands like he was trying to win a lawsuit and introduced himself with, "I'm here to scale velocity and kill inertia." I wish I were making that up. First thing he did was toss a 3-ring binder full of investor compliance terms onto the receptionist's desk and say, "Let's digitize this dinosaur crap." He breezed past my cubicle without even making eye contact and headed straight for the executive wing, where he announced, loud enough for facilities to hear, that we'd be sunsetting legacy processes starting today. By noon, he'd already canceled 2 of my compliance prep meetings and CC'd me on a new workflows draft that had been typed in Comic Sans. Comic Sans. I kept my mouth shut. I'd seen this archetype before, Silicon Valley's special breed of glitter-coated ignorance. They come in fast, burn twice as bright, and explode like a gender reveal cannon full of unpaid lawsuits. My job wasn't to stop Blake. My job was to outlast him, but it got worse. Wednesday rolled around and we had a pre-pitch walkthrough with a few minor clients, folks who weren't funding the Series C but knew the ones who were. Investors talk. That meeting mattered. I'd coordinated the session with legal, facilities, and yes, our notary, Barbara, who'd agreed to finalize and retain Exhibit C at the end of the walkthrough, assuming everything looked proper. It was going fine. Small talk, bottled water, name tags. Barbara had her folder out, stamp ready. She sat in the corner, quiet, professional, exactly as she should have been. Then Blake walked in late and decided to make an entrance. He didn't just open the conference room door. He slammed it back like he was serving a subpoena. "Let's get this train moving, people," he announced before physically squeezing between two guests to reach the whiteboard. In doing so, he knocked Barbara's purse off the chair next to her. Didn't apologize, didn't even look. Just grabbed a marker and started sketching a growth funnel that looked suspiciously like a penis. I glanced at Barbara. She didn't flinch. She just closed her folder, stood up, collected her things, left, no eye contact. No goodbye, nothing, like I said, a ghost who'd seen enough. "Who was that?" Blake asked after she was gone. "State licensed notary," I said, cool as a glacier. "She was here to finalize the Exhibit C." Blake laughed. "We're not notarizing a mortgage, Rachel. It's 2025. Nobody cares if a document's signed in fountain pen under a blood moon anymore." He turned back to the whiteboard. "If they're not standing, they're not relevant." That's when I knew we were headed off a cliff. Because in our line of work, relevance isn't decided by who's loudest. It's decided by who signs what, when, and in what legally binding format. And Blake had just casually insulted the only person who could verify a core compliance document for $180 million in escrow funds. But again, I didn't argue. I just opened my log. Entry: Notary Barbara Renner exited at 10:14 a.m. No notarized Exhibit C completed. VP Blake present. Timestamp. Encrypt. Backup. Later that day he summoned me to his office, if you could call it that. He'd redecorated the VP suite into some kind of minimalist dojo meets coffee bar. No desk, just beanbags, a single iPad on a floating shelf, and a whiteboard that said "Move fast/bill hard." "Rachel," he said, lounging like a discount Bond villain, "I need you to chill on the paperwork obsession. Investors invest in people, not in forms. Let's be agile. Let's not get bogged down in red tape." I nodded, understood. He smiled like he thought he'd won. "Good, I knew you were reasonable." I smiled back. "Oh, I am, extremely reasonable." Then I walked out, already planning how to weaponize that reason when the time came. Let the notary walk, let the VP strut, let the interns staple half-signed exhibits to coffee-stained pitch decks. All I needed to do was wait. It was the Thursday after the walkthrough when I made my one, and only, attempt to salvage the wreckage. I knocked on Blake's glass office door, already half regretting it. Inside, he was pacing in Bluetooth headphones, nodding like he was agreeing with someone important. I waited. He finally waved me in with two fingers like I was delivering room service. "Quick question." Started, keeping it light. "Exhibit C, the notarized indemnity statement, still needs to be signed in person. Barbara was our notary, but she left after, well, you remember the walkthrough." He didn't even pause, just rolled his eyes and said, "We've got scanned versions. The stamp's not the hill we're dying on." "It's not a hill," I said carefully. "It's clause 11.4. Escrow won't release without the original, signed and notarized. Scans aren't valid." He leaned back, propped his feet up on a cube ottoman, and gave me the look people give when they think you're cute for trying. "Rachel, come on, this is Series C. You think investors are going to walk over a notary stamp? We'll get a DocuSign or something? You're over-engineering this." I didn't smile. "It's not me, it's the contract." He blinked, like I'd just spoken Elvish. Then he waved his hand like he was swatting a fly. Okay, noted. We'll circle back. But seriously, stop spooking people. Optics matter. Let's not get mired in red tape." "Understood," I said, and that was it. That was the moment I stopped offering him parachutes. I left his office, walked down the hall to HR, and because I'm pathologically thorough, flagged the concern. Nothing dramatic. Just a quick conversation with Melissa, our HR manager and part-time enlightenment coach. He dismissed the compliance requirements, I said. "Exhibit C still needs a notary. He believes scanned documents are acceptable." I wanted it on record that I flagged this. Melissa sipped from a mug that said "Teamwork makes the dream work" and sighed. "Rachel, I get it, but don't challenge him right now. Blake's driving a lot of momentum and the board likes his energy. Energy won't override a binding clause, I know, but just pick your battles, okay? Trust the leadership transition. We're building something exciting." "Sure," I said and stood. And that was the last time I brought it up. I walked back to my desk, opened the deal terms again, and stared at clause 11.4 like it was scripture. "Escrow disbursement is contingent upon receipt of Exhibit C, duly notarized by a certified officer, prior to investment pitch. Digital copies are not sufficient for compliance." It couldn't have been clearer if it had been written in blood. I copied the clause, pasted it into my log, and added a new entry, reminder issued to VP3/14. "Escrow terms clarified. Response, we'll get a DocuSign." I didn't escalate it to legal. I didn't flag it for the investors. I didn't even tell facilities not to bother scheduling another notary. I just closed my laptop and let the clock start ticking. People forget how dangerous silence can be when it's intentional. The next day, the interns were bustling around with armfuls of folders, finalizing the pitch deck materials. I asked one of them, Maria, if anyone had the original Exhibit C. She frowned. I think it's scanned somewhere. Blake said he'll add it to the packet later. I nodded. Thanks, I didn't correct her. I didn't mention the clause. I didn't offer to help. Instead, I quietly checked my drawer. The original Exhibit C still sat inside, untouched, unsigned, unnotarized. I left it there, locked it back up, and emailed myself a copy of the log backup. Off-site server, encrypted, timestamped. Just in case. Over the weekend, I stayed quiet. I didn't log in. Didn't offer to help prep. Didn't lean in or speak up or whatever hollow empowerment slogan was trending in HR's newsletter that month. I went to the farmer's market, read a novel, and let the intern team color code tab dividers like the fate of the universe depended on pastel post-its. Because when people ignore process, they forget that the process has teeth. And I had every bite lined up. By Monday, the office looked like someone had tried to recreate a startup launch party using a Staples clearance rack. Every surface was covered in pitch deck drafts, legal exhibits, investor bios printed in Comic Sans, and at least 3 different kinds of trail mix. Blake had declared this week all hands, no breaks, which apparently meant interns were now running compliance, and our actual legal counsel had been moved to review later status. The schedule I'd built over the last 6 months, meticulous, color-coded, cross-referenced with our investors' legal calendars, was ripped off the wall and replaced with a whiteboard that said, I kid you not, vibes, Monday, thrive, Tuesday, dominate, Wednesday, close. He'd added little rocket ship doodles next to each day. Meanwhile, actual compliance steps were vanishing like socks in a dryer. Blake rewrote the production timelines I'd built and emailed the team to say we didn't need to hold ourselves hostage to Rachel's paranoia. He pulled me off the prep calls entirely. Your head down legal, he told me in the hallway. We need front-facing energy right now. Let the interns do assembly. Assembly. Like we were packing investor documents in Happy Meals. And they did. Poor Maria and Ethan, 2 whip-smart kids who'd come in thinking they'd learn about corporate law, were now being told to just print whatever looks official and combine it all with those clippy things. No instructions. No verification, just vibes and staplers. Every time I passed the war room, I saw things that made my spine itch. Unsigned exhibits being slipped into folders, documents with mismatched letterheads, someone using whiteout on a release clause. At one point, I watched Blake dictate the legal disclaimer for the deck to a marketing associate who was typing with one hand and eating Cheetos with the other. But I didn't say a word. Instead, I opened my log. Entry, 3/17 legal exhibit be printed from draft version dated Feb 12. Not updated with amended clause. No review requested. Entry, 3/18 final pitch deck compiled by interns. No formal compliance verification conducted. VP stated, lawyers can clean it up after we close. Entry, 3/19 CEO absent. Blake assumes full pitch authority. Escrow notary not rescheduled. Exhibit C remains unsigned. Each note was calm, factual, and timestamped. No emotion, just a breadcrumb trail of professional malpractice, preserved like fossils for when someone finally bothered to dig. Barbara, the notary, hadn't returned a single call or email, not that I blamed her. If I'd been publicly body-checked and then forced to listen to Blake's 40-minute soliloquy on building trust through disruption, I'd ghost the entire state of Ohio too. I didn't chase her. She'd made her choice, and frankly, I respected it. Exhibit C, meanwhile, was still sitting in my drawer, untouched. Its blank signature line looked up at me every day like a ticking bomb. Nobody asked me about it. Nobody followed up. Blake either assumed it was done or figured he could fake it later. Maybe he thought I'd just fold like everyone else had. But I didn't fold. I observed. I watched interns staple pages backward. I watched Blake pitch deck layouts that had screenshots of inspirational tweets. I watched him tell the finance lead that we didn't need backup docs for allocation summaries because it's all on Google Drive somewhere. And through all of it, I felt nothing. No rage, no panic. Just a deep, glacial detachment, like I'd stepped outside of my own body and was watching it all from orbit. There's a kind of serenity that comes when you know a house is on fire and no one else can smell the smoke. So I kept my head down, smiled when spoken to, ate my lunch quietly in the break room while interns argued over whether font size counted as a legal issue. It didn't matter. None of them knew what was really missing. No one had checked the clause. No one remembered Barbara. No one knew the Exhibit C they were scanning and shuffling into packets was legally worthless. But I did. And when the whole thing collapsed, I wanted to be able to look the board, the CEO, the investors, and God himself in the eye and say, I didn't stop it, but I didn't hide it either. I just watched and waited. The email hit my inbox at 7:03 a.m. on Friday. Subject line, Exhibit C confirmation request. Simple, clean, dangerous. It was from Carla Yee, lead legal counsel for Renwick Holdings, the anchor investor in our $180 million raise. She was the kind of attorney who used exactly as many words as she needed and not one more. Her email read, Rachel, please confirm receipt of the original notarized Exhibit C per Clause 11.4. Records indicate it should be on file by close of business today. Regards, Carla Yee Renwick Legal Division. That was it. No fluff, no emojis, no hope you're well. just the legal equivalent of a red dot laser on my forehead. I stared at the screen for a beat, then clicked reply all and typed. Hi Carla, per internal policy and escrow clause 11.4, notarization of Exhibit C is pending in-person authorization. Original not yet received. Best, Rachel Mendoza contracts and compliance then, because I've learned to enjoy my paperwork with a side of subtle vengeance, I CC'd Blake. 10 minutes passed. No reply. 20, still nothing. By lunch, his status light was green, but I knew better than to assume that meant he was reading anything. He was probably busy rearranging pitch deck slide order based on energy flow or something equally soul-killing. Finally, just after 1 p.m., calendar notification popped up on my screen. Pitch final Monday at 5 p.m. required. Full executive plus legal plus finance. Location, main boardroom. I sat back in my chair. So that was it. We were just marching ahead. Full steam, no notary, no signed Exhibit C, no valid escrow authorization. I opened my log, added a new entry. 3/22, 1:14 p.m. Investor legal requested Exhibit C confirmation. Notarized version not available. VP notified via CC. No response. Pitch meeting scheduled for 3/25, 5 p.m. Clause 11.4 currently at risk. Then I opened my offsite backup utility and exported the log with a new timestamp. Encrypted it. Uploaded a copy to an external legal verification folder I'd created 6 months earlier, just in case. I didn't send any alarms, didn't fire off any urgent subject lines, because by now I knew exactly what was happening. Blake had convinced himself that rules were flexible, that policies could be interpreted, that if he smiled wide enough and said synergy with enough syllables, the law would blink first. But contracts don't blink, and I wasn't going to save him from this one. That evening, I reviewed the full deal binder again. Everything looked impressive on the surface, thick, polished, carefully tabbed. But underneath, cracks, mismatched exhibits, incomplete references, missing signatures. The interns had tried, God bless them, but you can't fake 6 years of compliance experience with highlighters and motivational stickers. The notary, still silent. I didn't bother emailing her again. She'd made her exit with more professionalism than the entire executive team had managed in months. I stared out the window for a long time after that. Building lights reflected in the glass like little fires flickering on the surface of something deep and cold. I felt calm. Cold, yes, but calm. Because now it was no longer just about oversight. It was about consequence. The investors were watching the details, and Blake had no idea what was coming. Later that night, just before shutting down, I saw one final reply in the thread from Carla, noted, "See you Monday, 5 p.m. sharp." No emoji, no exclamation point, just a scalpel gently placed on the table. I clicked shut down, closed my laptop, and locked the file drawer one last time. Inside it, the unsigned Exhibit C sat untouched, like a trapdoor nobody had noticed yet. But it was there, and Monday was coming. Monday arrived like a loaded weapon. Blake showed up in a blazer 2 sizes too tight, grinning like a televangelist on his third Red Bull. He fist-bumped the receptionist, called the finance lead moneybags, and winked at one of the junior associates. "Big day, team. Let's get rich," he said, holding a coffee cup that read, "I eat compliance for breakfast." I wore navy, minimal makeup, hair back, no expression. By 4:30 p.m., the boardroom was humming with anticipation. You could smell the nervous cologne of ambition. Our CEO sat at the head of the table, flanked by finance and legal. Renwick's delegation had just arrived. 4 people in black suits and stone expressions, like a funeral with stock options. Carly sat nearest the end, briefcase flat on the table, laptop open, fingers steepled. No small talk, no smiles, just the cold click of documents being opened and arranged with surgical precision. Blake launched into his opener like he was hosting a game show. He stood, paced, waved at slides. "We're not just growing, we're accelerating. We've left red tape in the dust. We've replaced complexity with velocity. Our model is lean, hungry, and fully aligned with shareholder value." I sat in silence, one seat from the edge, pretending to take notes. In reality, I wasn't hearing his words, I was listening to the clock. 4:47 p.m. Carla began flipping through the deal binder. She did it slowly, methodically, like she was measuring each page against an invisible scale. Exhibit A, B, then the operating agreement, and the partner term sheet. Then her hand stopped. She looked at Exhibit C. She didn't speak, just studied it for a long moment. Then very calmly, she lifted her eyes and addressed the room. "This needs notarization," she said, her voice smooth as cut glass. "Where's the signed original?" The oxygen left the room. Blake froze mid-sentence, hand still raised toward the projector. He blinked. Laughed. "Oh yeah, that's in transit. Should be arriving any minute now." Carla didn't blink. "In transit?" "Yep," Blake said, nodding rapidly. "We had some minor scheduling hiccups with the notary, but we've got a scanned version in the interim." "No scanned version is valid," Carla said, eyes flat. "Clause 11.4. You were notified on Friday." Blake turned, eyes scanning the room like a man searching for an exit that wasn't there. "Rachel," he said, voice too high, too bright, "you've got the binder version, right?" "Didn't we sort this?" I didn't even turn. I just spoke, calm and clean. "No notarized Exhibit C has been received or executed." He laughed again, too loud. Okay, but it's coming. She's en route, traffic or something. Carla checked her watch. It was 4:58 p.m. The silence was so complete you could hear the HVAC hum. Carla closed the binder gently and looked at the CEO. Per the agreement, escrow funds are contingent upon full compliance. Without the notarized Exhibit C, release is void. The CEO's hand twitched toward his pen, then stopped. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Blake cleared his throat. We can reschedule the signing, right? Push to tomorrow. Carla packed her laptop into her briefcase. You had 6 weeks, then she stood. Renwick's delegation followed. One by one, quiet, methodical. Nobody said anything. I watched them leave like I was watching the final scene of a tragedy I'd already memorized. The sound of dress shoes on tile. The click of the door. 4:59 p.m. The CEO still hadn't spoken. Blake looked like he was trying to swallow his own tie. I sat there, hands folded on the table, staring straight ahead. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat, but inside I was already writing the next entry in my log. For a long moment after the door clicked shut, nobody moved. The boardroom felt like the aftermath of a controlled demolition. Nothing visibly collapsed, but the foundation was gone and everyone knew it. The CEO was still staring at the closed binder like it might spring open and solve everything on its own. Finance looked pale. Legal kept flipping through the binder like maybe, a notarized Exhibit C would magically appear if they blinked hard enough. Blake broke the silence. Okay, let's not panic. His voice cracked halfway through panic. He turned to me slowly, like a man realizing the ice beneath him isn't just thin, it's gone. Rachel, can you fix this? Not angry, not commanding, just pleading. I met his eyes for the first time in days. There was nothing left to say that wasn't already documented, timestamped, encrypted, and mirrored in 3 locations, so I said it plainly. The notary walked out last Monday, I replied, voice calm. I logged it. Silence. Real silence. The kind that weighs down the air. Makes your lungs second guess every breath. No one interrupted. No one defended him. Even the CEO, usually quick to paper over mistakes with corporate glue, didn't move. He just leaned back as if trying to put physical distance between himself and what had just been said. Carla, who had paused just inside the doorway, turned back. Then we're done for today, she said softly. Not cruel, just final. She didn't slam the door. She didn't raise her voice. She simply left, dragging the deal behind her like a closing curtain. Blake sagged into a chair as if someone had yanked the strings out of his joints. This is a misunderstanding, he muttered. We can explain, no, the CEO said finally. Just that. One word, razor-edged. I didn't speak. There was no point. I stood, gathered my notes, not that I needed them, and stepped toward the door. Blake scrambled to recover. We can still schedule another notary, right? I mean, the docs are here, we just need the signature. She'll come back. I turned to face him. She won't. How do you know? He snapped, sudden and raw. I didn't blink because I didn't chase her. His mouth opened, then closed again. I left the boardroom. In the hallway, the light had changed, the sun sliding low, casting long shadows on the tile. I walked past the glassed-in war room where the interns were still pretending not to refresh their email every 5 seconds, past the break room with its stale coffee and untouched snacks, past the laminated posters about core values nobody believed in anymore. When I got back to my desk, I opened my log. Final entry for the day, 3/25, 5:04 p.m. clause 11.4 triggered. Escrow release void due to missing notarized Exhibit C. VP notified. CEO present. Counsel confirmed termination of meeting. Outcome, deal frozen. I saved it, locked the file, synced the backup. And then I sat, hands folded in my lap, watching as the emails started to pour in, little digital aftershocks of the implosion none of them had seen coming. No yelling, no meltdowns. Just the soft whimper of $1 million deal quietly bleeding out on a Monday evening. Procedural death by precision. I'd spent my whole career being overlooked, dismissed, ignored. But today, silence had spoken louder than anyone in the room. It said, Rachel logged everything. The emergency session was called for 8 a.m. sharp on Tuesday, though no one used the word emergency. The invite just said, board debrief escrow situation, mandatory. But the panic was obvious in how many people actually showed up early, even the ones who normally drifted in around 9 with oat milk lattes and fake apologies. Blake didn't show up at all. I walked in to find the CEO already seated, face carved from stone, sleeves rolled up like he was preparing for surgery or an execution. Legal was there, finance, HR, a few senior stakeholders who never joined unless something was truly burning. One of them nodded at me like a priest acknowledging a witness at the gallows. The air was quiet, tense. No one made small talk. Someone had turned off the digital art display in the corner, so even the usual calming slideshow of landscapes was gone. Just static glass. Let's begin, the CEO said. Melissa from HR cleared her throat and stood. I've been asked to walk through the compliance documentation surrounding Exhibit C and the events leading up to yesterday's pitch. She opened a laptop, plugged into the projector, and up came my log. Not just a few bullet points, the log, every entry, every timestamp, every line of calm, methodical truth. There it was, the notary's departure, Blake's dismissal of protocol, the investor's Friday warning. The pitch schedule override, the absence of the signed original. Melissa read aloud, no one interrupted. The CEO leaned forward slowly, hands tented under his chin. At some point during the reading, he stopped taking notes and just watched the screen. When it ended, the silence sat in the room like a loaded weapon. He turned to me. You had this the whole time? Yes, and you didn't push it to legal? No. Why not? I met his eyes, steady. I did once, then I watched. He didn't blink. Just exhaled, the kind of breath people let out when they realize the bleeding is worse than expected. He turned to legal. Is this enough to absolve the company of noncompliance liability? Yes, they said immediately. The documentation proves Rachel followed protocol. There was no concealment. She acted within the limits of her role. Good, the CEO said. Then, after a beat, added, we're not going to take the fall for someone else's ego. HR added, Blake's contract has been reviewed. His authority exceeded limits without verification. We'll initiate formal separation. There it was, no fanfare, no spectacle, just procedure, executed cleanly. Like pulling a bad tooth, I didn't smile, didn't gloat. Just sat with my hands folded in my lap as my name flickered on the screen above Exhibit C-TIC's audit trail. No drama, no passion, just the quiet vindication of knowing the fire had finally reached the arsonist. The CEO looked back at me. His voice was quieter now, not condescending, just weary. You could have gone louder. I could have, I agreed, but you weren't listening. He nodded, almost like he respected it. Then he stood. I want Rachel in all future pitch preps. Full compliance oversight, no exceptions. We almost lost a $180 million deal because we treated process like decoration. Someone coughed. Someone else typed a note. No one argued. Meeting adjourned. Back at my desk, I sat down slowly. My inbox was a flood of just checking in emails, people suddenly remembering I existed. HR sent a formal thank you. Legal sent a compliment that felt dangerously close to admiration. Even Carla from Renwick sent one line, thank you for the log. I didn't respond, just flagged it and moved on. The office felt different now. Not quieter, just recalibrated. People didn't walk past me like I was part of the furniture anymore. They looked, nodded. Some even smiled like they meant it, but I didn't need any of that because I hadn't won through shouting. I hadn't demanded recognition. I hadn't raised a single red flag. I had logged the truth, locked it down, and let it walk into the room on its own. And now people listened. The reschedule notice came in at 10:16 a.m. sharp, sent by Renwick's counsel. Clean, neutral, just a polite nod toward the nuclear crater we were pretending didn't exist. We are willing to reconvene under revised leadership and full compliance review. Please confirm new point of contact for contracts and compliance. Revised leadership. No mention of Blake. No accusation, just a surgical removal like snipping off dead tissue. The CEO called me in that afternoon. No calendar invite, just a knock from his assistant and a murmured he wants to see you. I assumed it was about the report. Maybe another round of cleanup. A final debrief before they reshuffled me back into the shadows. But when I stepped inside his office, it was empty save for him and a single manila folder on the table. He didn't stand, didn't smile, just gestured to the chair across from him. I'll make this quick, he said. They're giving us a second chance. You're the reason. I waited, no reaction. He slid the folder across the table. Inside, a new badge, a revised contract. Letterhead stamped Acting Vice President Contracts and Compliance, effective immediately. Retroactive to last Thursday. I blinked. That was the day Carla emailed me about Exhibit C. He watched me, as if waiting for tears or gratitude or some moment of release. I gave him none, just a quiet nod. You're not surprised, he said. No, he nodded too, almost respectfully. The board expects full recovery oversight. You'll report directly to me. I already did. He cracked the faintest smile, not officially. I stood, folder in hand. Will that be all for now? I walked out just as the wall clock above reception ticked to 4:59. Same time Blake had stalled it last week, choking on his own bluff. The same time the notary should have been stamping Exhibit C. The same time the deal died the first time. It felt right. Back at my desk, my inbox was already updating. CCs shifted. Threads realigned. Project ownership maps now listed Mendoza are, in bold next to legal/compliance. I opened one last message, subject line blank, just a sender tag, Carla E. Read understood. Thank you for the log. 7 words, no fluff. No punctuation beyond the period that landed like a gavel. I stared at it for a moment, then hit archive. The last thing I did that day was scroll to the bottom of my Slack sidebar and find the final message Blake had sent me before the pitch. I hadn't opened it, didn't need to. The preview said, heads up, Exhibit C thing might not matter lol. I hovered. Then hit delete. No ceremony. No rage, just the clean click of a mistake erased. The notary walked out. I didn't chase her. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't warn anyone twice. I just logged everything, and the clock did the rest. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.